The transport ship landed on station Orion 7 with a loud hiss of steam and pressure release. Inside, 47 recruits from 12 different alien species waited nervously. They had traveled across the galaxy to join the Galactic Coalition Training Academy. This was the most famous military school in known space. Only the best were chosen to come here. Gorath was one of the first to step off the ship. He was a Vrel, and like all his kind, he stood nearly 3 meters tall. His green scales covered thick muscles and 4 powerful arms hung at his sides. The Vrel were known throughout the galaxy as the strongest warriors. They had conquered 6 star systems before joining the coalition. Gorath had killed his first enemy at age 12. He feared nothing. Behind him came Tika, a young Kelani female. Her body was covered in a hard brown shell-like armor. She had 6 legs and 2 arms, and her large black eyes saw everything around her at once. The Kelani were fast, very fast. They could move quicker than most eyes could follow. Near the back of the group walked Pella, a Lori. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and no hair. Her large silver eyes seemed to look through things rather than at them. The Lori were telepaths. They could read minds and sense emotions. Pella could feel the excitement and pride coming from the other recruits. Everyone here believed they were special. A coalition officer met them at the landing pad. He was a small creature with gray skin and 3 eyes. He checked their names on a data pad and pointed toward a large building in the distance. "Combat Training Hall," he said in a bored voice. "Your instructors are waiting. Do not keep them waiting long." The recruits walked together across the station. Orion 7 was massive, a city floating in space. Ships flew overhead. Soldiers from 100 different species walked past them. Gorath felt proud to be here. Soon, he thought, he would learn to use the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Plasma rifles, energy swords, maybe even the legendary particle cannons that could cut through starship armor. The combat training hall was a huge building with high ceilings and smooth metal floors. When the recruits entered, they stopped and stared in confusion. There were no weapons. No plasma rifles hung on the walls. No energy swords sat in display cases. Instead, there were wooden racks holding long sticks made of bamboo. There were strange wooden swords that looked like they belonged in a museum. There were sets of padded armor made from cloth and leather. Gorath thought there must be some mistake. He looked around for the real training equipment, but there was nothing else, just wood and cloth and silence. 2 figures stood at the far end of the hall. They were humans. Gorath had heard of humans. They were a young species from a small planet called Earth. They had only joined the coalition 50 years ago. Compared to the Vrel, who had traveled among the stars for 10,000 years, humans were like children. Gorath had never met one in person before. The first human was a male. He looked old, maybe 40 years by human counting. His black hair was cut very short, and his face showed no emotion at all. He wore simple gray clothes and stood perfectly still, like a statue. A small sign on his chest read, "Master Sergeant T." The second human was a female, younger than the male. She had long black hair tied behind her head and calm dark eyes. She stood with her hands folded in front of her. Her sign read, "Lieutenant Yuna." Gorath walked closer to the wooden weapons. He picked up one of the wooden swords and examined it. The thing weighed almost nothing. It had no sharp edge. It could not cut paper, let alone armor. He started to laugh. "What is this?" Gorath asked loudly, turning to face the other recruits. "Are we children? Do they expect us to play games?" Some of the other aliens began to laugh too. A group of Vrel soldiers pushed forward to look at the wooden weapons. One of them grabbed a bamboo stick and bent it until it snapped in half. "My people were fighting wars when humans were still living in caves," Gorath continued. He held up the wooden sword so everyone could see it. "And now they want to teach us with toys." He closed his 4 fists around the wooden blade and squeezed. The wood cracked and broke into pieces. Goreth threw the broken bits on the floor. "Bring us real weapons," he demanded, looking at the two humans. "We did not travel across the galaxy to play with sticks." The other recruits were all talking now. The Kelani clicked their mandibles in amusement. A group of large, rock-like beings called Mordai simply refused to pick up any of the equipment. Even Pella, the quiet Lorai, looked doubtful. Through all of this, the two human instructors did not move. They did not argue. They did not explain. Master Sergeant T simply walked to a large board on the wall and wrote 4 words with white chalk. Week 1, Foundations. Lieutenant Yuna stepped forward and smiled politely at the recruits. Her voice was soft but clear. "I understand your confusion," she said. "You came here expecting advanced technology. You expected to learn how to fire plasma weapons and fight with energy shields. You will learn those things, but not yet." "Why not?" demanded Goreth. "Because a weapon is only as good as the one who holds it," Yuna answered. "You have strength, you have speed, you have natural armor and claws and teeth, but do you have control? Do you have discipline? Do you have the ability to stay calm when death is one step away?" Goreth crossed all 4 arms over his chest. "I have killed more enemies than you have years of life, human." Yuna nodded slowly. "I do not doubt it, but killing is easy. Any fool can kill. What we teach here is something harder. We teach you to win." "What is the difference?" Yuna looked at Master Sergeant T. He had not spoken a single word since the recruits arrived. He stood at the edge of the training hall, watching everything with dark, unreadable eyes. "You will understand soon," Yuna said quietly. "For now, pick up the training swords. We begin in 10 minutes. Anyone who does not wish to learn may leave." She gestured toward the door. Goreth stared at the broken wooden sword on the floor. Part of him wanted to walk out. He was a Vrel warrior. He had earned his place through blood and battle. He did not need lessons from humans who had only discovered fire a few thousand years ago. But another part of him was curious. There was something strange about these two humans. They showed no fear. They showed no anger. 47 alien warriors, some of the deadliest beings in the galaxy, stood before them making threats and insults. And the humans just watched with calm, patient eyes. What did they know that he did not? Goreth reached down and picked up a new wooden sword. He did not like it, but he would stay. He would watch. And if this was all a waste of time, he would make the humans regret bringing him here. Around him, the other recruits slowly picked up their own training weapons. Pella took a wooden sword gently, as if it might break. Tika grabbed 2, 1 for each arm, and tested their weight. Master Sergeant T watched them all. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was low and quiet, but somehow everyone heard it perfectly. "Good," he said. "Now we begin." The first 3 days were torture. Master Sergeant T did not teach them to fight. He did not show them secret techniques or deadly moves. Instead, he made them stand still. "Hold the sword at chest level," he commanded. "Keep your back straight, breathe slowly, do not move." The recruits stood in long rows across the training hall. 47 warriors from across the galaxy, frozen like statues, holding wooden swords in front of them. 1 minute passed, then 5, then 10. Goreth's 4 arms began to shake. The wooden sword was light, but holding it in the same position made his muscles burn. Sweat ran down his green scales. He wanted to lower his arms, but T walked between the rows, watching everyone with cold eyes. "Do not move," T repeated. "Feel the weight of the sword. Let your body learn its shape." 20 minutes passed. 30. Some recruits began to drop their weapons. A large Mordai made of living stone simply sat down and refused to continue. 3 Kelani collapsed, their thin legs unable to support them. T said nothing. He did not punish them. He did not yell. He simply watched as more and more recruits gave up. After 1 hour, only 12 warriors remained standing. Goreth was one of them. His entire body screamed in pain, but he would not fall. not in front of a human. Pella still stood too, though her pale face was twisted with effort. Tika had fallen after 40 minutes, but she watched from the side with frustrated eyes. Finally, T told them to rest. Goreth dropped his sword and fell to his knees, gasping for air. "That was pointless," he growled when he could speak again. "What did we learn from standing still? Nothing." T walked over and stood in front of him. The human was small compared to Gorath. His head barely reached the Vrel's chest, but his eyes showed no fear. "You learned that you cannot hold a sword for 1 hour," T said calmly. "How will you fight for 1 hour? How will you fight for 3 hours? For a whole day? A strong body is nothing without a strong mind. You gave up not because your arms failed, but because your mind told you to quit." Goreth stood up, towering over the human. "My mind is strong. I have fought in dozens of battles, real battles with blood and death, not standing around holding sticks." T looked up at him without expression. "Then prove it." "How?" "Attack me." The training hall went silent. Every recruit turned to watch. Lieutenant Yuna, who had been adjusting equipment in the corner, stopped and raised an eyebrow. Goreth looked down at the small human. T was asking to be hurt. The Vrel had killed creatures twice his size with his bare hands. This human had no scales, no claws, no armor. He was soft and weak, like all his kind. "I do not want to hurt you," Goreth said. "It was almost true. Almost." "You will not," T answered. That was too much. Goreth reached down with his lower right arm, moving fast, trying to grab the human's neck. One quick motion to prove his point. His hand closed on empty air. T had moved, not backward but to the side, just a small step. Goreth's arm passed by him and met nothing. The Vrel stumbled forward off balance. He spun around, angry now, and swung with all 4 fists at once. This was his famous attack, the one that had broken the skulls of enemy warriors. 4 massive green fists, each one powerful enough to dent metal, flying toward one small human. T did not block, he did not fight back, he simply was not there. Goreth's fists hit nothing. His own momentum carried him forward, and he felt something push gently against his back. It was T's hand, just a small touch, but it was enough. Goreth crashed to the floor face first. He roared and jumped up, swinging wildly. Again and again, his attacks found only air. T moved like smoke, always just out of reach. Every time Goreth lunged, a gentle push sent him stumbling past. Every time he grabbed, his fingers closed on nothing. It was like fighting water. After the 7th fall, Goreth could not get up. He lay on the training mat, breathing hard, his 4 arms spread out beside him. He had not landed a single hit. He had not even come close. T stood over him, not even slightly tired. The human had not thrown a single punch. He had not kicked or struck or attacked in any way. He had just moved, redirected, and let Goreth defeat himself. "Strength without control is just noise," T said quietly. "You are loud, very loud, but you cannot touch me." Goreth stared at the ceiling. His pride wanted him to get up and try again. But his body would not obey. And somewhere deep inside, a small voice told him that he could try 100 more times and nothing would change. "How?" he asked finally. "How did you do that?" T reached down and offered his hand. After a moment, Goreth took it and allowed the human to help him stand. "The wooden sword teaches you to listen before you speak," T answered. "You attacked with everything you had, all your strength, all your speed, all at once, but you did not watch. You did not wait. You did not listen to what I was doing. You did nothing." "Exactly, I did nothing. I let you defeat yourself. Your strength became your weakness because you could not control it." T picked up one of the wooden swords and held it out to Goreth. "This sword has no edge, it cannot cut, it cannot kill. That is why it is perfect for learning. When you hold this sword, you cannot rely on its power. You must rely on yourself. You must learn patience, control, awareness." Goreth took the wooden sword. It felt different now. heavier somehow even though it weighed almost nothing. Around the training hall, the other recruits were silent. They had watched their strongest warrior, a Vrel who had conquered star systems, fail completely against a human half his size, and the human had never even tried to hurt him. Tika stepped forward and picked up a wooden sword. Her large black eyes studied it carefully, as if seeing it for the first time. "I want to learn," she said quietly. One by one, the other recruits did the same. The Mordai who had sat down earlier slowly got back up. The Kelani who had collapsed returned to their positions. Even the ones who had laughed on the first day now looked at the wooden weapons with new respect. Pella watched T as he walked back to the front of the hall. Through her telepathic senses, she tried to read his mind to understand how he had done what he did. But his thoughts were strange, calm, quiet, like a still pond with no ripples. Most beings had minds full of chaos. Thoughts bounced around like storms, full of fear and anger and desire. But this human's mind was almost empty. Not stupid, she could feel great depth beneath the surface. But controlled, perfectly controlled. She had never sensed anything like it. "We will try again," T announced. "Same stance, same position, 1 hour. This time I expect more of you to remain standing." He looked at Goreth. "You will stay standing for the full hour, yes?" Goreth raised his wooden sword to chest level. His arms still ached. His pride still stung. But something had changed inside him. For the first time in his life, he had met an enemy he could not defeat with strength alone. And he wanted to learn how. "Yes," he said, "I will stay standing." T almost smiled, almost. "Good," he said, "now we begin again." 3 weeks passed on Station Orion 7. The recruits trained every day from dawn until night. They held their wooden swords until their arms burned. They practiced footwork until their legs shook. They learned to breathe slowly, to move carefully, to think before acting. It was nothing like the training they expected. Lieutenant Yuna led the afternoon sessions. While T taught the body, Yuna taught the mind. She gathered the recruits in a circle and spoke to them about history, about philosophy, about the strange path that had led humans to develop these techniques. "On Earth," she began one day, "our ancestors fought with swords for thousands of years. At first, they trained with sharp blades made of metal. Many young warriors died or lost limbs during practice. The training was almost as dangerous as real battle." The recruits listened in silence. Some of them still did not understand why they needed to hear stories about primitive Earth. But after watching Goreth's defeat, none of them dared to complain. "Then our masters created the wooden sword," Yuna continued. "They called it Bakken in one ancient language. Some people laughed at it. They said real warriors should train with real weapons. But the masters knew something important." "What?" asked Tika. "They knew that a sharp blade teaches you to fear the weapon. You hold it carefully. You move slowly. You are always afraid of making a mistake, but a wooden sword has no edge. It cannot cut you. When you train with wood, you are free to make mistakes, free to fall, free to fail. And that is how you truly learn." Goreth sat at the edge of the circle, listening. 3 weeks ago, he would have called this foolish talk. Now he was not so sure. Every day, his skills improved. His movements became smoother, more controlled. He could hold his stance for 2 hours without shaking. He was starting to understand things that he could not put into words. "There is another reason," Yuna said. "The wooden sword teaches you that the weapon is not important. The warrior is important. Give a master a wooden stick and he can defeat a fool with a plasma cannon, because victory does not come from the weapon. It comes from the mind that controls the weapon." She paused and looked around the circle. "Our ancestors had a saying, 'The greatest warrior is the one who wins without fighting.' This sounds strange, yes. How can you win if you do not fight?" No one answered. "Goreth," Yuna said gently, "you fought Master Sergeant T 3 weeks ago. Did he fight you?" Goreth shook his large head. No, he did not fight, he just moved. And who won? He did, the words came out like stones. I could not touch him. Yuna nodded. He won without fighting. He did not need to hurt you to defeat you. He simply let your own strength destroy itself. That is the highest level of skill, not the power to kill, but the power to control, to decide when violence is needed and when it is not. Pella raised her slender hand. May I ask something? Of course. I have been trying to understand you and Master Sergeant T. With my abilities, I can sense the minds of others. Most beings have thoughts that move like storms, wild and chaotic, but your minds are different. They are quiet, still, like a lake with no wind. The other recruits turned to look at Pella. They knew she was a telepath, but she rarely spoke about what she sensed. How did you achieve this? Pella asked. Yuna smiled slightly. The same way you are learning now, practice, patience, time. When I was young, my mind was as chaotic as anyone's. I was full of fear and anger and doubt. But I trained. Every day I held my wooden sword. Every day I practiced my breathing. Every day I sat in silence and let my thoughts settle. For how long? 10 years before I could hold my mind still for 1 minute. 20 years before stillness became natural. I have trained for 30 years now, and I am still learning. Pella's silver eyes widened. 30 years, just to quiet your mind. The mind is the hardest thing to master, Yuna said. You can build muscle in months. You can learn techniques in years, but true mental control takes a lifetime, and it is worth every moment. A still mind sees clearly. A still mind does not panic in danger. A still mind can find peace even in the middle of war. That evening, the recruits practiced in silence. T walked among them, correcting postures, adjusting grips. The training hall was quiet except for the soft sounds of wooden swords moving through air. Goreth practiced alone in the corner. He had changed in the past weeks. Before, he had trained with anger, trying to prove his strength. Now he trained with focus, trying to understand. His forearms moved in perfect coordination, each swing controlled and precise. Tika approached him nervously. You have improved greatly, she said. Goreth paused his practice. So have you. Your speed is incredible now. Before you moved fast but without purpose. Now every motion has meaning. Tika clicked her mandibles in the Kelani gesture of thanks. I never thought I would say this, but I am grateful for the wooden swords. When I trained on my homeworld, everything was about speed. Who could strike first? Who could move fastest? But I never learned to think. I just reacted. And now I see patterns. I understand timing. I know when to move and when to wait. She looked down at her wooden sword. This simple thing taught me more than all my years of combat training. Across the hall, Pella sat in meditation. Her eyes were closed and her breathing was slow and deep. She was trying to find the stillness that Yuna described. It was not easy. Thoughts kept appearing in her mind. Memories of her homeworld, worries about the future, questions about the training. But slowly, gradually, she was learning to let them pass without following them. She sensed T approaching before he spoke. You are making progress, he said quietly. Pella opened her eyes. How can you tell? Your breathing is different, your posture is different. 3 weeks ago you held tension in your shoulders. Now you are relaxed. He sat down across from her. The mind and body are connected. When the body is tense, the mind cannot be still. When the body is relaxed, the mind follows. Is that why we hold the sword for so long? To relax. Partly, also to build patience, and to teach you that discomfort is not the same as danger. Your arms hurt when you hold the sword, but you are not dying. Your mind tells you to stop because it is uncomfortable. Learning to ignore that voice, to push through discomfort, that is the foundation of all discipline. Pella considered this. On my world, we rely on our telepathic abilities. We sense danger before it arrives. We read minds to know what enemies will do. But you humans have no such gifts. How do you predict what opponents will do? T was silent for a moment. We watch, we learn, we practice until reading an opponent becomes instinct. Every being has patterns, ways they like to move, ways they react to pressure. If you pay attention, you can see what they will do before they do it. No telepathy required. That seems very difficult. It is. That is why we train so hard. What your people do naturally, we must learn through years of work. But there is an advantage to learning it this way. What advantage? It cannot be taken from us. If something blocked your telepathic powers, you would be lost. But skills that you build through training, through struggle, through thousands of hours of practice, those belong to you forever. No one can take them away. Pella thought about this for a long time after T walked away. She had always trusted her natural abilities. All Lori did. But what if T was right? What if the skills you earned were more valuable than the gifts you were born with? She picked up her wooden sword and began to practice. Around her, the other recruits did the same. The training hall was filled with the quiet rhythm of movement and breath. Aliens from a dozen different worlds, all learning the same ancient human art, all becoming stronger, not in body, but in mind. None of them knew that their real test was coming soon. The alarm woke everyone at 3 in the morning. Red lights flashed across the station. A loud voice repeated the same message over and over. Emergency. All personnel to designated safe zones. This is not a drill. Emergency. All personnel to designated safe zones. The recruits gathered in the training hall, confused and nervous. They had been at the academy for 6 weeks now. In all that time, nothing like this had ever happened. Station Orion 7 was supposed to be one of the safest places in Coalition space. Lieutenant Una arrived first, her face serious. She carried a data pad that glowed with urgent red warnings. Master Sergeant T came behind her, silent as always, but Pella sensed something different in his mind. The calm was still there, but beneath it was a sharp focus, like a blade hidden in water. Listen carefully, Una said. 30 minutes ago, a Morkith raider ship appeared from nowhere and attached itself to the civilian sector of the station. We believe they used stolen cloaking technology. Station security was caught by surprise. The recruits looked at each other. The Morkith were infamous throughout the galaxy. They were 8-legged predators, each one as large as a ground transport vehicle. Their bodies were covered in hard black shells, and their 4 front limbs ended in claws that could tear through metal. They lived only to raid, to kill, to take. No species had ever successfully negotiated with them. How many? Gorath asked. At least 40, maybe more. They have taken the civilian medical bay and are using the patients as hostages. Over 300 innocent beings, including children, are trapped inside. Tikka's shell rattled nervously. What do they want? They want the station's fuel reserves and weapons stockpile. Coalition Command is negotiating, but... Una paused. The Morkith do not truly negotiate. They are buying time. Our sensors show they are moving groups toward other parts of the station. We believe they plan to kill the hostages once they have what they want, then take more hostages from other sectors. Where are the station's defenders? Asked a Mordai recruit. Fighting in the main corridors. The Morkith are holding them back. Reinforcements from the fleet will arrive in 4 hours, but that may be too late. The pirates are pushing toward the secondary medical bay, where 200 more wounded civilians are being treated. If they reach it, the hostage count will double. Una set down her data pad. Coalition Command has ordered all recruits to remain in the safe zone. You are considered non-combat personnel, too green to fight. She looked at T. He gave a small nod. However, Una continued, there is another option. Master Sergeant T has studied the station's layout. There is a network of maintenance tunnels that connect the civilian sector to the training facilities. The tunnels are narrow, too small for the Morkith to move through easily. The station defenders cannot use them because they need to hold the main corridors. but a small team could move through the tunnels and reach the secondary medical bay before the pirates. "And do what?" Gorath asked. "Hold them back, buy time until reinforcements arrive." T spoke for the first time. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "The tunnels are close quarters, very close. There is no room for plasma weapons. One missed shot could cause explosive decompression and kill everyone in the sector. It must be hand-to-hand combat, silent, controlled, precise." The training hall was completely quiet. Every recruit understood what T was saying. This was exactly the kind of fighting they had been training for. Wooden swords had prepared them to fight without relying on technology, to move in tight spaces, to stay calm under pressure. But this would not be training. This would be real combat against some of the deadliest predators in the galaxy. People could die. They could die. "I must be clear," T said. "This is not an order. Coalition Command does not want you to go. Officially, this mission does not exist. If you come with me, you may not survive. The Morketh are savage fighters. They feel no fear and give no mercy." He paused. "But if we do nothing, innocent beings will die. Children will die. I have spent my life training for moments like this. I am going, with or without you." Gorath was the first to step forward. "6 weeks ago I thought your wooden swords were toys," he said. "I was a fool. You have taught me more about real combat than all my years of war. If you say we can do this, I believe you. I will fight." Tika stepped forward next. "I am fast. In the tunnels, speed will matter. I will come." Pella joined them. "I can sense where the enemy is. I can warn us before they attack. I must come." One by one, every single recruit stepped forward. Not one remained behind. The Mordai, the Kelani, the Vrel, even species that had shown no talent for the training, they all volunteered. 47 warriors standing together. T looked at them for a long moment. Then he did something Pella had never seen before. He smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. "Good," he said. "Arm yourselves. Take whatever you can carry. Wooden swords, metal pipes, anything that can serve as a weapon. We leave in 5 minutes." The recruits scattered, gathering equipment. Yuna approached T quietly. "The command will be angry," she said. "Let them be angry. Those are civilians. Those are children. I will not let them die while we hide in a safe zone." "I know." Yuna picked up a wooden sword of her own. "That is why I am coming with you." T shook his head. "You should stay. Someone needs to report what happened if we fail." "If you fail, there will be nothing left to report." She tested the weight of the sword. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you do not get yourself killed. You are a terrible patient." For just a moment, something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Then T nodded. "Very well, stay at the rear. Protect the ones who fall behind." The recruits gathered at the entrance to the maintenance tunnels. The door was small, barely large enough for Gorath to fit through if he crouched. Beyond it, darkness waited. Pella reached out with her senses. She could feel the distant minds of the Morketh like pools of black hunger. They thought only of killing, of feeding, of destruction. There was no reasoning with such minds, no negotiation, only survival. "They are far still," she reported, "at least 200 meters ahead, but they are moving toward the medical bay." T checked his equipment one final time. He carried only a wooden sword and a small knife at his belt. No armor, no shield, just himself and his training. "Remember everything we have practiced," he told the recruits. "Stay calm, control your breathing, watch your surroundings. Do not waste energy on wild attacks. Every movement should have purpose." He looked at each of them in turn. "Some of you may not survive tonight. I will not lie to you about that. The Morketh are deadly enemies, but I have watched you train for 6 weeks. I have seen you grow. I have seen you change. You are ready for this, not because of the weapons you carry, but because of what you have become." Gorath raised his wooden sword, the same weapon he had mocked on his first day. the same weapon he had broken in half to show his strength. Now he held it with respect, with understanding. "For the Coalition," he said. The other recruits raised their weapons. "For the Coalition," they answered together. T turned toward the dark tunnel. "Stay close, stay quiet, trust your training." Then he stepped into the darkness, and 47 warriors followed him. The tunnels were darker than anything Pella had ever experienced. Even with her telepathic senses, she could barely feel the walls pressing in from all sides. The recruits moved in single file, each one following the shadow ahead of them. T led the way. He moved without hesitation, like he could see in complete darkness. Perhaps he could. After 30 years of training, nothing about these humans surprised Pella anymore. Goreth walked directly behind T. His massive body barely fit in the narrow passage. He had to duck his head and press his 4 arms against his sides. Any other Vrel would have complained about the cramped space. Goreth moved in silence. After 20 minutes of walking, Pella felt them. The Morkith were close now. She could sense their minds, 8 of them, just around the next corner. They were standing guard, blocking the path to the medical bay. 8 enemies ahead, she whispered. 10 meters. They do not know we are here. T held up his hand and the line stopped. In the darkness, Pella could barely see him gesture to Goreth and 3 Kelani recruits. They moved forward, pressing against the tunnel walls. The attack happened in seconds. Goreth came around the corner like a quiet storm. His 4 arms grabbed the nearest Morkith before it could make a sound. The creature tried to slash with its claws, but Goreth redirected its momentum, exactly as T had taught him. The Morkith crashed into its companion, sending both tumbling. The Kelani struck next. They were so fast they seemed to disappear. One moment they were beside Pella, the next they were among the enemies, wooden swords cracking against shells and joints. They did not try to kill with brute force. They targeted weak points, the joints between armor plates, the soft spots beneath the claws, the clusters of eyes on the Morkith heads. In 12 seconds, all 8 guards were down. No alarms, no shots fired, just silent, controlled violence and then stillness. T moved among the fallen enemies, checking each one. "Unconscious," he reported. "They will wake in a few hours with bad headaches. We move." Pella stared at the scene. 8 Morkith, some of the most feared predators in the galaxy, defeated by recruits who had trained for only 6 weeks. And they had done it without killing, without even making noise. This was what the wooden swords had taught them. They continued through the tunnels. Twice more they encountered Morkith guards. Each time the recruits worked together, flowing around the enemies like water around stones. Goreth used his strength to control and redirect. Tikka used her speed to strike and retreat. Pella warned them of danger before it appeared. Every recruit had a role. Every movement had purpose. Then they reached the junction. The tunnel opened into a larger maintenance hub, and there they found not 8 Morkith, but 24. The creatures had gathered here, preparing for their final push toward the medical bay. They saw the recruits at the same moment the recruits saw them. There was no surprise this time, no silent attack, just open combat. The Morkith charged with horrible screams. Their 8 legs carried them forward faster than seemed possible. Their claws reached out, hungry for blood. T moved first. Pella had seen him fight once before against Goreth on the first day, but that had been a demonstration, a lesson. This was different. This was T without restraint. He flowed through the Morkith like wind through trees. His wooden sword became a blur, striking joints and nerve clusters with impossible precision. Every Morkith that reached for him found itself thrown off balance, its own strength used against it. T never stopped moving, never stood still, never gave the enemy a target to hit. Around him, the recruits fought for their lives. Goreth faced 3 Morkith at once. He used all 4 arms in perfect coordination, each one blocking or striking while the others created openings. A claw slashed his shoulder, drawing green blood, but he did not stop. He grabbed the attacking limb and twisted, using the Morkith's weight to throw it into its companions. Tika was everywhere and nowhere. Her speed had always been impressive, but now, combined with the footwork Yuna had drilled into her, she was almost impossible to track. She darted between enemies, striking and vanishing before they could respond. Her wooden sword found eyes, joints, the soft flesh under shells. Pella stayed at the back as Yuna had instructed, but she was not useless. Her telepathic senses swept across the battlefield, warning recruits of attacks they could not see. Goreth, behind you. Tika, on your left. Watch the ceiling they climb. Lieutenant Yuna fought beside her, protecting the recruits who fell back with injuries. Her style was different from T's, more gentle, more flowing, like she was dancing rather than fighting. But every Morkith that approached her ended up on the ground, confused and disabled. The battle lasted only 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. When it ended, 24 Morkith lay unconscious or writhing in pain. Not one had been killed, and not one recruit had died, though many were wounded. Goreth leaned against the wall, bleeding from a dozen cuts. His breath came in ragged gasps. "That," he said, "was the hardest thing I have ever done." T wiped his wooden sword clean. There was blood on his arm, but his face showed no pain. "The medical bay is just ahead. Pella, are there more enemies?" Pella reached out with her senses. The remaining Morkith were pulling back, retreating toward their ship. They had sensed the disaster in the tunnels and were fleeing. "They are running," she reported. "The path is clear." The recruits limped through the final corridor and emerged into the secondary medical bay. The civilians inside stared at them in shock, dozens of wounded aliens of every species, lying on beds and floating in healing tanks. They had heard the fighting. They had expected to die. A doctor rushed forward. "Who are you? How did you get past the Morkith?" "We are recruits from the Coalition Training Academy," Yuna answered. "And we did not get past them. We went through them." The Coalition reinforcements arrived 2 hours later. By then, the remaining Morkith had fled into space, leaving behind their captured supplies and over 40 unconscious companions. The hostages in the primary medical bay were freed without another shot being fired. The station commander wanted to know how a group of recruits had defeated nearly 50 Morkith in close combat without a single death on either side. T simply handed him a wooden sword. "We trained," he said. 1 week later, the recruits gathered in the training hall for the last time. They had all been promoted, given medals, praised by Coalition Command. News of their victory had spread across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know about the humans who had taught aliens to fight with wooden sticks. Goreth stood at the front of the group. His wounds were healing, but he would carry scars for the rest of his life. He did not mind. They were scars he had earned. "I want to say something," he announced. The hall fell silent. Goreth reached into a bag and pulled out 2 pieces of wood, carefully bound together with cord. It was the wooden sword he had broken on his first day, the one he had snapped in half to show his contempt for human training. Someone had repaired it. "Who fixed this?" he asked. Lieutenant Yuna smiled and pointed at T. The master sergeant stood at the edge of the hall, quiet as always, watching his students with something like pride. Goreth looked at the repaired sword for a long moment. Then he walked across the hall and stood before T. "I was broken," Goreth said slowly. "When I came here, I thought I was strong. I thought I was a warrior, but I was just loud, just noise, like you said. You could have given up on me. You could have let me stay broken. Instead, you fixed me. The same way you fixed this sword." He held out the weapon. "I do not know how to thank you. In my culture, we have no words for what you have given me, so I will show my thanks in the only way I know." Goreth knelt before the human, lowering his massive head. "Teach me more," he said. "I want to learn everything you know. I want to become what you are." T reached out and placed his hand on Goreth's shoulder. "You already have," he said quietly. "The sword teaches, but the student learns. I gave you wood and words. Everything else you built yourself." He pulled Gorath to his feet. "But yes, there is always more to learn, for you, for me, for all of us." 6 months later, the Galactic Coalition published a new training manual. Chapter 47 was written by Master Sergeant T and Lieutenant Yuna. It was titled Foundations of Close Combat, The Way of the Wooden Sword. The chapter became mandatory reading for all Coalition recruits across the galaxy. And in training halls from one end of known space to the other, wooden swords began appearing on weapon racks. They hung beside plasma rifles and energy blades, beside particle cannons and fusion grenades. Simple wooden weapons that could not cut, could not kill, could not do anything except teach. No one ever laughed at them again.